So welcome everybody to our Saving Devon's Treescapes talk tonight, all about how to ID trees in the springtime. And what a wonderful time of year to be looking at trees. All of them are starting to come out in leaf now. And I actually noticed when I was walking, driving down the A38 today, there are a lot more in leaf today, which is lovely. And it gives us a bit of hope for the coming summer and good weather, perhaps. So today the talk is going to be given by our very own Graham Beck, who's our Treescapes Advisor for the Saving Devon's Treescapes project. Graham will talk more about the Saving Devon's Treescapes project as a whole, but we are a Heritage Lottery funded project, and we have other funders, including One Tree Planted and other funders, which we are very grateful for, as it allows us to put on amazing events and the whole project as a whole. So if anybody at the end of this talk would like to find out a bit more about the project, you can find us on the Devon Wildlife Trust website. We are a project that's led by Devon Wildlife Trust, but on behalf of a big partnership called the Devon Ash Dieback Resilience Forum. So if anybody wants to attend any more events, we do pop all our events on the Devon Wildlife Trust What's On pages, as well as Eventbrite. So do keep an eye on those too. And I'll be sending a follow-up email with a few links for anybody interested. So I will pass it over to Graham now, if he's ready to share his screen. And then, as I said, if you just pop in any questions into the chat, and then once Graham's finished, he'll pass back to me and I'll go through those. So Graham, if you're happy, I will pass to you.
Hi there, everybody. I hope everybody's had a great day today. My name is Graham, and as Jazz says, I'm a tree officer for Saving Devon's Treescapes. So the Saving Devon's Treescapes is a response to ash dieback, basically, and its potentially huge impacts that it's going to have on the landscape and ecology of Devon and England as a whole. Our aims are to raise awareness, but principally to be really proactive in our ambition to germinate, nurture, and distribute, sometimes assist with planting many thousands of trees and hedge plants for Devon communities that we've got from our community nurseries. We're in a 6-year project. We're sort of midway through that, focused on providing free trees, but also help with our many volunteers of carrying out research and awareness on the key species that are strongly connected with ash trees, and there are quite a lot, and the impacts the disease are going to have on them. This is possible for us to do through the generosity of our funding partners, as you can see here. And Jazz mentioned a few, and there is a lot, and they are very supportive. So our 2 community nurseries are both now busy transplanting germinated seedlings, with thousands already up and away and more coming. The process for this nursery actually starts in the autumn with a massive seed gathering exercise. So we have a huge thanks going out to all our volunteers who invest many hours collecting seed and getting these seedlings started, and then throughout the season to the finished seedlings ready for a new home. Winter tree planting keeps us busy and our volunteers for the winter months, and it's a hugely rewarding activity to get involved in. So we're always looking for more volunteers to help with the massive job of planting all these trees that we're distributing. So far, our community-based tree hub days and our work with Devon schools has seen thousands of our little trees going out to new homes all over Devon, and on top of our regular landowner tree planting support offer. So there's literally thousands and thousands of our trees through the project planted and growing successfully all over Devon now. And some of the citizen science work that we do includes summer bat surveys, which will be starting pretty soon, lichen learning and recording, and bringing awareness to the records of Devon's most notable trees in our countryside and communities. And many of these trees are sort of unrecorded, apart from at a very local level. So it's creating a database where these trees are recorded for their significance to people in their local areas. And all of these projects and others that we've got running are well worth looking into and getting involved in. So ash dieback in Devon. So as you can see here, we've got nearly 2 million ash trees, mature ash trees in the county, and the second commonest only to oak as a tree. So there is an awful lot of them out there, and they're very common in our hedgerows as well. In the woodland, they make up over 20% of woodland cover, so they're a very significant player in our woodlands as well. And even alongside our roadsides, there's just a huge number of ash. And even in our urban areas, as seen here with Torbay, with 95,000 ash trees in that area, which is a phenomenal number, and quite a problem for a lot of people if the disease becomes as significant there as everywhere else. Biodiversity-wise, ash are hugely significant. We've got nearly 1,000 species that are associated with ash, and 45 of those rely on ash as a species for their long-term survival. So it's critically important for them too. You can see here from some of these photos the effects of the disease. So what you can kind of see there is dieback, but then regrowth, and that regrowth is the tree trying to struggle on, but unfortunately a lot of that growth will be reinfected, and it'll end up the demise of that tree. Even on some of the younger ones, sometimes younger trees are actually more heavily affected than even older trees, and so you get that diamond-shaped lesion on their trunks, and then a lot of dieback on their young growth, leading to what basically looks like their autumn seeds, the keys, but it's actually dead leaves that just haven't dropped off yet. So that's kind of an outline of our mission, really. As I say, it's been going, we're in our third year now, so we're well into it, and we have got a lot of trees planted out there. So I've selected 10 native tree species from our countryside to give a brief description about. Some of you will be aware of these trees, and some of these trees may be completely new and ones that you haven't come across before. So hopefully you'll be all keeping an eye out for the uncommon ones in your travels. My aim is to make these sessions a fairly regular event, as time allows for me to do the research and put it together. I'm very passionate about trees and their role in the ecosystem. So I'm looking forward for doing more presentations. So I'd love to hear some feedback and any ideas that anybody has for further talks in the future. I'll be very, very keen to hear. So I've put lots of snapshot facts and observations together, kind of taken from research and enthusiasts out there that I've met along the way, and we've allocated plenty of time afterwards to sort of take any questions, or if anybody's wanting to go into a bit more detail about some of the points and facts I've been talking about at the end of the session. So we'll start off with the wild cherry. So A mature wild cherry can grow up to 30 meters, but they may only live for 60 or 80 years, which is actually is pretty young by tree standards. They flower early, starting sort of late March, one of the first to start flowering really, and lasting for about a month. And the flowers are hanging in clusters of sort of 4 to 6 florets. And flowering is normally at the same time as the leaf emerge. And cherry trees are actually members of the rose family. So you can see that as in that picture with the white flowers, quite similar to some of our wild rose flowers. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. All the other structures are quite different from other members of the rose family. The fruit ripen during May and June, and as we know, they're mostly gobbled up by birds. But what they do is spread the seed kind of far and wide. They end up distributing the seed over a wide area, but most of the seeds that they deposit end up going into the tummies of mice and voles. But the odd one misses and gets to germinate and starts a new cherry. The European wild cherry is the main ancestor of our eating cherries, now planted all over the temperate world. Through archaeology, it is now thought that people have been cultivating cherries for nearly 3,000 years in southeastern Europe, mainly for the actual cherries. Cherry tree leaves have an adaptation on the leaf stalk called a nectary. These are 2 glands, and you can see in the picture up there that excrete sugars believed to be for attracting ants, who are well armed and would protect the leaf from leaf-eating insects and caterpillars. The black alder is a common tree found along our rivers and waterways and pretty much all over the UK. And it sometimes forms a distinct forest called an alder carr in very wet, swampy areas where pretty much no other tree can tolerate. And these are quite interesting forests and quite unique. The alder flowers are wind pollinated and are in the form of catkins for the male, and the female are a small cone with the most minute, tiny little flowers that after fertilization become the woody cones that we see throughout winter on the alder trees. You can actually almost see the little tiny flowers on the little short rugby ball shaped cones on that picture on the right. And so each tiny, they're almost too small for the naked eye, but that's what receives the male pollen and develops the tiny seed in there. These seeds are a favorite of quite a few birds, such as siskin and goldfinch, who have got their beaks and the deftness to actually get into those mature cones and extract the little seeds out. The alder tree seeds are unusual in that each tiny seed has a little flotation sac within it, so that any seed that falls onto a waterway will get taken downstream and then probably lodged into a bank somewhere. And if it's lucky, it will germinate and then carry on growing. They grow really fast if they get a little bit of a niche to grow in. Mature wooded edge alders often have exposed old roots that are a favourite site for otters to make their nests. Ideal for them because they've got immediate access to the river to go fishing and whatnot. There is a concern out there in Europe. Alder trees are succumbing to a fungus disease called Phytophthora ornei, and in parts of Europe, it's strains of this fungus are actually killing widespread and large numbers of alder. We have got the disease in the UK, but at this stage, it's not harming the trees too much. So it may be that we've got a less virulent strain, but hopefully we don't get the European version. because that could be quite serious. So alder wood is has got a really bad reputation for historically for not lasting, becoming soft and filling with dry rot very quickly. But conversely, when the timber is in water, the opposite effect happens, where as it ages, it gets harder, and they've discovered that. So it's been used a lot with shipbuilding, and most famously with the piles of Venice. Wych elm is a beautiful tree, and unfortunately quite affected by Dutch elm disease, but they are a little bit less susceptible than the English elm. So they're a large forest tree up to 35 meters. So they're a big tree. They're primarily found in the north and west of the UK. And in the past, it's been an important canopy tree in ancient woodland. And there is still some to be found, but they're not easy to find. And wych elm is distinct from other British elm varieties, and that it almost never suckers, and it does produce viable, quite abundant seeds. So it does seed quite readily, which is lucky. So it does sustain itself where it's to be found. And like all the other elms, it has a strangely lobed leaf that's asymmetrical. So one side of the leaf has a lobe that is connected to the leaf petiole. In the past, elm branches were used for farm animals to graze on their leaves. So they would be cut as a fodder when during droughts and times when there was not enough other food for the animals. And the bark used to be made into a rope. And they believe that the word wych has an Old English meaning of sort of like pliant and bending, as in the rope. So the Dutch elm disease, it is still a problem for wych elm, but as I said, less so than the English elm, which are pretty much gone as a large tree from the countryside. So the trees are normally, when they do get infected, it's after they get a diameter of their trunk of about 10 centimeters. So less than that, the elm bark beetle that spreads the disease doesn't seem to bother the tree. So, but always as they get bigger, it's going to be a problem. So that the female elm bark beetle, which carries the disease and infects the trees, she bores into the trunk and to lay her eggs, and that's when she infects the tree with the disease. So that when a tree is discovered and a female beetle is going to lay a lot of eggs, and then as those larvae are kind of consuming in the inside of the tree, they'll be picking up spores of the disease, so that when they're adult beetle and can leave the tree to find another tree, that's how they spread the disease to other trees. But there is much breeding work going on in the UK and in Europe as well, trying to find elm tree seedlings that have got resistance to Dutch elm disease. So hopefully one day we'll have these glorious trees back in our woodlands and countryside. Interestingly, Brighton has managed to keep the disease just through management away from their area, and they estimate they've got about 19,000 mature elm trees around the town and local countryside, and a lot of these are still a magnificent big elms that are not really seen in other places. And they also have the National Elm Tree Collection. So the silver birch, everybody knows the silver birch. They're probably one of the more common trees to be seen. But they're even though they're pretty common, they're very striking as well still. The silver birch, it is very, very familiar and a successful species throughout the British Isles. This tree is incredibly important to the environment, as well as having attributes that make it many people's favourite tree to have on their properties. And silver birch take their name from the smooth white bark of their trunks, which is broken by dark vertical fissures, and these get larger as the tree gets older. The leaves of birch are triangular with a double-toothed leaf edge. So this is a good way of identifying silver birch from downy birch. So you can kind of see on the leaf in the photos, they have sort of quite irregular tooth sizes on the margin of their leaf, whereas the downy birch actually has the same sort of profile, but its leaves are tend to be a bit thicker and duller, and pretty much all the teeth are kind of the same size, and often they're quite covered in really, really tiny fine white hairs. So we have birch as a pioneer species growing all across Britain, right to pretty much the top, and in Northern Europe, Siberia, all the way further east than that. And we even have a birch species called Betula nana that grows now only in alpine Scotland, but it's also grows throughout Scandinavia right up into the Arctic Circle. And this birch never grows above knee height, so it's a tiny dwarf, but it still looks kind of the same, but just in a tiny version. So the birch was one of the first trees to recolonize the UK after the ice retreated at the end of the last ice ages. They achieved this by having extreme cold hardiness, so they can literally grow where pretty much no other trees can tolerate, and producing vast amounts of wind-borne seed. So each tiny seed has it has a flattened profile, and it has a little wing on either side of the seed case. So that they're pretty much designed to get into the ear in a good breezy day, and travel really, and they can travel quite a long way. Their downfall as a species is the fact that they need a lot of light. They don't tolerate shade very well, and they create, because they're a pioneer species, they take on pretty tough, really stony marginal sort of ground, but after they've been there for some time, they've kind of reconditioned it, and basically all the other tree species start to invade, and because they often get a lot taller, they will eventually shade the birch out. So birch are always on the move, and they're always looking for a new space to grow before other species come in and close them out. So, but they are the ultimate pioneer. So this is one that probably not many people have perhaps even heard of, let alone seen, but there are some around. So this is probably the rarest tree, one of the rarest trees we're likely to see in Devon. It only grows in a really localized few locations in the southwest, and it's presumed to be a natural hybrid of the wild service tree and the whitebeam, which are both members of the Sorbus genus. And this hybridization happened, they think, a long time ago, and then over time it's kind of stabilized into its own actual species. Its leaves are oval with serrated margins and fine white hairs on the leaf underside, hence the name whitebeam. And beam is an Old English word for tree. So you get hornbeam further east, and that means hard tree for its timber. And the clusters of small white flowers, they'll be appearing in May, so next month. And the clusters of berries are going to ripen sort of from orange to a greeny brown color in the autumn. Historically, these edible fruits were sold in Devon markets as opmost, or sorb apples, but they're mainly now left for the birds. So I'd be interested to hear if anyone's tried any of these in the past. It'd be fascinating to. I don't think, from what I've read, that they're particularly delicious, but yeah, we're not really sure on that. So the Devon whitebeam has an extra chromosome, 4 instead of the usual 2, and its female ovals are self-fertile, so they do not need fertilizing to produce viable seed. This is very rare in nature, and scientifically it's called apomixis. And this can result in pockets of basically clone trees, and these trees are found nowhere else in the world. So quite an unusual tree all around, really. And this is the crab apple, our native wild apple, perhaps the most attractive small tree when in flower. Usually the white flowers have a flush of pink, and on a mature tree, or if you've got a group of these trees, when they're in full flower, it's a pretty stunning sight to see, really. The crab apple has been shown genetically to be the second most important species in the makeup of the eating apple. The eating apple is actually native to fruit forests of southern Kazakhstan and Central Asia, and were brought west over like a 2,000-year period by Romans and various people, and then their genetics were mixing with our local apple along the way, and that's how they ended up with the domestic apple that we eat. These eastern fruit forests are quite amazing, and they're worth going on YouTube or Google to research, to have a look at those. So many of our sort of most common fruits come from this really select area in Central Asia where almost no people ever visit, and it is a pretty, from what I can see, it's definitely somewhere I'd like to go and visit. So it can be pretty tricky to know if the apple trees that you may come across in the countryside are the true native crab or a hybrid with the domestic apple. There's quite a lot out there that are actually hybridized now. Some key identifying traits to look for in the native apple: the crab has a smaller leaf compared to hybrid apples. The fruit of the true crab is usually smaller, less than 3 centimeters across, which is much smaller than the hybrid apples. The crab apple fruit are usually green to yellow-green. They don't usually have too much red involved there. The true crab develops small spines on the fruiting spurs, so they can actually be quite a thorny tree when it's a true crab apple. And in Britain, the wild crab is associated with 93 different species of insects alone. So there's a lot of pollinators that visit them when they're in flower, but there's a lot of other species of insect that use the tree, the fruit, and the leaves and whatnot. So the wild crab apple is under threat as well, as they are dependent on open, well-lit habitats. So a lot of the places that they naturally grow, as we're doing less coppicing in the woodland than we used to, there's a lot less sunny glades that trees like crab apple kind of need. So one of their strongholds is in Hampshire's New Forest. So if you're ever visiting the New Forest, especially at this time of year, you'll probably come across quite good numbers. So in the New Forest National Park, the ripe crab apples fall to the ground and are eaten by ponies and cattle, in which the apple seeds pass through unharmed and ready to germinate somewhere new. This appears to be their primary means of dispersal for the crab apple. And the crab apple is also a favorite host for mistletoe, which is a semi-parasitic plant that grows in the clefts of branches. So field maples, Acer campestre, Another beautiful tree, one of our many beautiful trees. The field maple flowers are hermaphrodite, meaning that both male and female reproductive parts are contained within one flower. The flowers are showy and yellow-green colour, cup-shaped and hang in clusters. Pollination is generally carried out by bees and flies. So they'll be coming into flower very soon. So flowering in April, beginning just at the same time as the leaf is emerging. Field maple can grow up to 20 meters, so they're not one of our tall trees. They're sort of a mid-size, but they can live for 350 years, so they can hang around for quite a while. Their leaves are fairly small by maple standards, compared to sycamore or Norway maple, for instance, but they share with them the same look and having 5 lobes. With the field maple, the central lobe is kind of elongated, so normally. Maturing seeds are tinged with pink on the seed wing for a time, and the 2 connected seed cases with their opposite wings form the classic helicopter means of dispersal in the wind. Winter buds are normally small and grey, and with the bare branch twigs having often a corky growth running the full length of the branch. This is a common trait with elm, which also does this, and they think it's an adaptation to deter grazing by deer when they're still quite young and small. Field maple is known as an intermediate species in the ecological succession process. It is not typically among the first trees to colonize a new area of freshly disturbed ground, say, but instead germinates under existing vegetation where it's very shade tolerant initially when it's young, but then becomes much more light demanding as it matures. Another of my favorites is the black poplar. And the black poplar is one of Britain's tallest growing trees, and they can get up over 40 meters, and they can live for a good 200 plus years. Their natural habitat is very closely related to rivers and streams, a bit like black alder. And this is also the UK's most threatened large tree. So the black alder is dioecious, which means it's got male and female flower catkins on separate trees. The male catkins are quite a bright red, and the female are a yellow-green color. The flowering is pollinated with the wind if they're close by. So the leaf buds are opening now, and they kind of exude a distinctive milky yellow sap, which has got quite a strong, it's quite arguably quite a pleasant smell, but some people may disagree on it. Of the 6,000 or so black poplar trees remaining in the whole of the UK, only about 600 of these are female. So, and often these trees are isolated from others, and there's little chance of them breeding. It is believed that there's no natural regeneration of black poplar in Britain at the moment. And this is a result of a lack of adult trees in the wider landscape and their very specific seed germination requirements, which are recently disturbed river gravels and silts, but it must offer plenty of light and moist conditions for the summer dispersed tiny seeds that are only viable for a few days to settle. Viable seeds that are lucky enough to settle in this perfect spot would germinate and establish very quickly if there were more viable seeds out in the landscape. So hopefully it's a species that we can bring back and increase the number, and people are working on that. The small leaf lime, Tilia cordata. These are another very tall tree species, again up to about 40 meters, which pretty much is overtopping oak trees There's not many. There's only really the black poplar and some beech trees that can get that sort of height. The flowers are yellow and have a heady sweet scent, which is very popular with pollinators, especially honeybees and bumblebees. The lime tree flowers and fruit are attached to a sort of pale, green, odd-shaped bract. And the number of flowers and fruit per bract, it varies between lime species, but they are always sort of arranged in the same branch structure called a cyme. Flowering in June and July, and the flowers are insect pollinated. The leaves are broadly heart-shaped and are mostly hairless, except for small tufts of really fine brown tiny hairs on the leaf underside and amongst the leaf leaf vein axils. The winter leaf buds are small, kind of egg-shaped with bright red bud scales. So they're quite distinctive in the winter time for identifying. Lime's a fairly rare tree now in the Devon countryside, but that may change over time as the lime tree seeds very abundantly under warm conditions. So as our climate warms up, we'll probably find lime trees becoming seeding a lot more, and they do become naturally almost the dominant tree species in woodland. And they are considered an ancient indicator species in ancient woodland. And lastly, the European ash. Ash trees' leaves are arranged in opposite pairs, with each leaf being pinnately compound, meaning that the leaf is made up of 7 to 13 leaflets on a central stalk. Each leaflet has a serrated margin. These features distinguish European ash from mountain ash or rowan, which has also got compound leaves, but the rowan's leaf arrangement is alternative, not opposite. Their flowers are borne in small bunches before the leaves open, usually in April, and the flowers have no petals, but are a purple shade because of the male pollen. The ash flowers are wind pollinated as well. Trees can be male and female, in that they've got both reproductive parts. But more usually with ash is either all male flowers and all female flowers. But it is claimed that there are some trees that change from having all male flowers one year to all female flowers the following year, and then back to male again, which is, I've never heard of any other species that does that. The shoots are stout and a greenish-grey colour with black winter buds, which make the ash one of the most easy to identify winter trees. The seeds are called keys and hang in bunches from the branches. These are dispersed in the wind, as they have a little wing on them as well. Ash seedlings are very quick to colonize new sites that offer plenty of light as well. So ash dieback is caused by a fungal pathogen that grows within the tree and over time blocks the tree's water transport system. Repeated infections will probably eventually kill the tree outright, though some have anecdotally sort of recovered from it, but most of the time it's fatal. The pathogen's mode of entry to the insides of the tree is via the leaves, with the airborne fungus spores landing and sticking to a leaf, which they can then penetrate. It is thought that about 80 to 90% of our ash trees will succumb to this disease. Those that remain will over time build up a tolerance to this fungus, as the related Asian ash species have, as this is where the the ash dieback disease originated. So the Asian species coexist with the disease in their native home where the ash dieback disease comes from, and show almost no sign of the disease even when they are infected. It may take a number of tree generations for this tolerance to evolve naturally, or the process may be speeded up by people identifying which trees have genes offering tolerance among the wild population of ash and breeding from these trees. Okay. So here's a slide with a number of different opportunities people have to get involved with what we're doing. It's worth keeping an eye on the Devon Wildlife Trust website to see what's coming up. But we've got volunteering at two different tree nurseries, and collecting seed at the appropriate time of year. There's all sorts really. The planting events, really enjoyable days, getting out there in the winter and seeing how many trees you can get planted. And there's various other things. We've got, as you see here, we've got cultural walks and talks. And you may even want to host one yourself if you've got an idea of something that we could all get involved in. Okay, so you can, yeah, there'd be lots of things that you can get involved in. We'd love to see you. All right, Jez, how are we doing?
Yeah, thank you so much, Graham, for all of that. And I mean, I definitely learnt a lot there, and brilliant to see all the photos as well, especially of like little green flowers that no one would ever really notice, but hopefully everyone will go out and have a look, have a bit of a closer look now.
Yes,
and
it's great what you can do with a digital camera and the close-up mode.
Absolutely, or binoculars, the opposite way round. And yeah, just as a note, one of our volunteers did once try a Devon white beam berry, and they weren't very impressed by it, I don't think, but perhaps it was a bad one.
Yeah, just even the name Otmast, it doesn't sound particularly lovely, does it?
No. So if anybody has any questions, like now is the time to pop them into the chat. We haven't had any coming through during the talk, so I'll give everybody a couple of minutes in case they can think of any questions they had. We'll give everyone a few minutes. One thing I thought of, we often have people ask like kind of the difference between various leaves that might look quite similar.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people get confused between hazel and alder.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you maybe wanted to like chat a bit about that.
Yeah. So alder leaves, for one thing, they're shinier and they're almost perfectly round. When you look at them on a growing tree, the actual leaf surface is almost round, whereas a hazel, the leaf is much rougher, coarser. I guess with kind of like a fine, really tiny like hairs on their leaves, and they're more puckered and more oval shaped, and they have a sort of more of a serration around the edge. That's actually probably a really good identifying key. Is when you look at hazel, when it's in leaf, the leaf has a serration, whereas alder is pretty smooth on the margins. So quite when you see them side by side, they are quite distinctly different. So
I think that's often the problem, isn't it? Having them side by side. Is much easier. And the other one is field maple versus sycamore.
So sycamore, they are quite similar, but sycamore are much bigger, like generally twice the size, and often their leaf petiole, which is the little stalk that attaches the leaf surface to the branch, is much longer, and their lobes. So generally, if you imagine the Canadian flag sort of classic maple shape, the sycamore lobes are quite even all the way around, all five, whereas with the field maple, the sort of central lobe is much larger than the other ones, than the rest of them. So that's probably the key.
Yeah. I mean, field maple is one of my favorite trees, and yeah, such an amazing color in the autumn. It goes bright yellow, doesn't
it? They are probably our best autumn color. The wild cherry is pretty good as well, but
yeah, it goes a real red, doesn't it? The wild cherry.
Yes, it does, especially if we get a dry summer.
Fingers
I think a little bit of stress through the growing time does help bring out more color.
Perhaps a future talk. Autumn leaves.
There's lots of other interesting trees that even in Devon, but in the UK as a whole. So yeah, there's plenty of scope for other talks. So if anyone has got anything that they would like to hear a bit about, I'm very happy to do some research and go digging into it.
We have had a question. It's asking, when do the back counts take place, and can they get involved with that?
It's I think in May, is it that they?
I was just trying to remember. Yeah, so I think the best. So they are. Has it begun already, or is it about to begin? That is about to begin. So yeah, so we're prepping the. So our colleague Lindsay does all the bat surveying. So the best thing you can do is to go to the Devon Wildlife Trust website and search for Saving Devon's Treescapes project, and all the information will come up there. You can sign up for basically Devon is split into areas, and you can sign up to be kind of like the surveyor in your area. You get the bat detector for 3 nights, and you pop it in your garden, if it could be like someone else's land if you've got permission. And it runs until kind of the end of the summer. So I can put in a link in the follow-up email for that as well. So I'll make myself a little note to do that. Have you got anything to add to that, Graham?
I haven't done one yet, but I'm very much looking forward to doing one this season when it starts. It would be quite fascinating to see how many different species are where I live.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you find it, so you send off your all your recordings, and you get all the information back as to what you've got in your garden, which is really exciting. So we haven't had any other questions. So if everybody's happy, we're almost at 7:30. So I will stop recording now, and I'll pop that recording up on the Devon Wildlife Trust YouTube channel if anybody wants to rewatch, or send it on to other people that hadn't managed to come along. And thank you so much for everybody joining us, and wishing you a nice rest of your evening.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you for listening, and I enjoyed doing that.